Bassett with us now. Thank you for being here, Laura. It seems as though she's saying, listen, what my husband thinks is not necessarily what I think, exerting her independence, but this message was highly intentional on her part, was it not?
Absolutely intentional. Look, she didn't have to put out a statement. She doesn't have to put out a statement on everything the president does, and she certainly doesn't. But I think Melania has this Be Best campaign. It's her signature cause as First Lady. It's an anti-cyberbullying campaign. So if she were to just kind of stand by and say nothing while her husband kind of humiliates her by bullying people online all the time, as he does, it would make her look really stupid, and she knows it. So I think this is just the latest in a series of ways that she's not only tried to distance herself from him and assert her independence, but actually publicly contradict him.
Yeah, in January, she traveled separately from the president to his State of the Union address, which was noted. Also noted in March, she talked about that criticism you were talking about from people who, I don't want to say make fun of by any means, but they question the authenticity of the Be Best campaign. And she came right out and said, listen, you can criticize me all you want. I'm going to do what I know is right, is exactly what she said. It is surprising. It's unconventional, especially coming out of, you know, the George W. and Laura Bush years and the Barack Obama and Michelle Obama years when there was such a cohesive unit there. But with that said, historically, is it really that unusual for a First Lady to put herself out there?
I think it's extremely unusual to have these, and it's regular contradicting statements coming from the First Lady and coming from the White House. A couple weeks ago, I'm sure you guys remember, there was reports that Donald Trump criticized her for watching CNN, and her press team put out a statement saying the First Lady watches whatever she wants. And then, of course, everyone remembers the jacket controversy. She wore that jacket to visit migrant children that said, "I don't really care, do you?" And her press team put out a statement saying there's no hidden message on the jacket. And then Trump later came out and said, actually, it's a message against the press. It's talking about the press. And there was some speculation that the "I don't really care" message was about migrant children. I'm starting to wonder if that message was directed at her husband or at the politics of the White House in general, because she seems now intent on having her own voice and being her own person.
Do you think it would be smart for her to go to LeBron James' school if she's invited?
I think it would be a real message.
We're trying to figure that out, right?
Words I can't say is what it would be to her husband.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think there is a space, say, for Melania Trump to join in some sort of charitable effort with LeBron James?
I think she should. I think if she's going to have this Be Best campaign, I think if she's going to profess to really care about children, visit migrant children at the border, say that she really cares about, about schools, about all the things she professes to care about, sure, I think that would be a really nice move. It would be a really nice way for the White House, the whole White House, to extend an olive branch to this person who was just deeply insulted by the president.
So with that said, when we look at how she moves forward with Be Best, she has to be very intentional in that. But how does she get away from the criticism of her husband when she clearly has a very genuine interest in doing something for children?
I think that the criticism is going to keep on coming as long as she stands by her husband, as long as she stays married to him, and as long as she doesn't. And these statements she's putting out are veiled, you know. She's saying, I support LeBron James. That's a pretty easy thing to say. She's not saying, I denounce my husband for bullying him online. And so until she does that, I think the criticism is going to keep coming.
All right. Laura Bassett, it's just so baffling on one hand, and at the same time, you know, she's really fighting to stand on her own. And, you know, there's respect there, certainly. Thank you so much, Laura. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take good care. Martin?
Still to come, we're going to talk to a guest who reveals that the president's attacks on the media are actually his campaign to try to monopolize information. The president's campaign, that is. We'll tell you why he finds that very worrisome next. As the threat to democracy becomes greater, if the media and Trump administration cannot at least have a shared sense of information. And back with us to discuss this is CNN senior media correspondent Brian Stelter. Brian, you talked to David about this morning, and I believe you got other news as well. Good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, you too. I think this is an interesting way to think about the president's rhetorical exercises. You know, when he says polls are fake, but then he highlights certain polls he likes, or when he says he supports law enforcement, but then attacks Robert Mueller. He's trying to control what information is acceptable. That's what David Leonhardt suggested to me in this interview. He said this was an especially bad week when it came to the president's campaign against independent information. Here's a part of what David said.
He essentially is on a campaign against anyone who represents an independent source of information. The media, Mueller's investigation, the FBI, the national security apparatus, the Congressional Budget Office, scientists in the case of climate change. I could go on and on and on. But Trump essentially wants a monopoly on information, and he wants to attack anyone who threatens that monopoly.
Kind of an interesting frame, an interesting way to think about the president's criticism of the media, his criticism of the Mueller investigation, etc. If you view it all as an attempt to control what information is okay and acceptable, that all might start to make sense.
So, Brian, the latest tweet from the president really kind of takes it to a whole new level, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's just posted something in the last few minutes. Once again here, attacking the press as the enemy of the people. You know, you all can read it on screen for yourselves. It's pretty ugly. He says the press can sow great division and distrust. They can also cause war. He says journalists are very dangerous and sick. Look, he does continue to ratchet it up a little louder every time. I think of it as a verbal form of poison, slow-acting poison. It trickles through the veins. It's intended to cause people not to trust what they hear, what they read, what they see. And in fact, he's been pretty explicit about that recently, saying you can't believe what you're reading. I also noticed one line at his rally last night that sums it up really well. He said, "We're doing so many things that you don't even know about." Now, he was saying that in a positive way to his supporters, saying, hey, the media is not telling you about all the great things we're accomplishing. You could also view that in a very negative way about the scandals and controversies that plague his administration. But he believes the press is out to get him, and he acts very much like he's in a bunker, like he's on the defense. It is one of the defining themes of this presidency.
You know, other presidents, though, have, of course, tried to monopolize information, or at least, you know, they've tried to control their message, their version of events. Much more difficult, though, in a modern world when you have social media and many more different media outlets.
Yes, the president is supported by a pro-Trump media universe that could not have existed 20 years ago and did not exist even 10 years ago. Largely, it's Fox News and a variety of websites that prop him up and support him almost no matter what. And again, at the rally last night, this was really telling. The president was giving shout-outs to his favorite Fox News hosts, and he used the word we, as in we are winning, we are in this together. He thinks of himself almost as a part of Fox News at this point. At least that's the way he was talking at the rally last night. But make no mistake, when he says enemy of the people, this is extremist rhetoric. This is the kind of rhetoric that was used by Stalin and by other dictators many, many decades ago. It has its roots in a very ugly part of our shared history on this planet. And so the president, when he brings that language back, when he tries to use that language to divide people, it's going to end up being a sad chapter of his presidency.
Because the numbers of distracted walkers is way up, and this week's Staying Well looks at how you really can keep yourself safe and what the injuries are. Could be severe.
When we're walking and texting, we either can't walk well or we can't text well. Most of the distracted walking injuries are actually from younger generations. We've seen upwards of 50% increase in the last 10 years with distracted walking injuries, both in the emergency department and in our clinics.
I was texting and I tripped on the stairs. I ended up tearing off part of my toenail.
We have people coming in with hand injuries, shoulder injuries, back injuries, concussions. Nearly half of all traumatic brain injuries or concussions actually derive from falls. People have milliseconds when they fall. If you're walking and texting and about to fall, the number one thing you want to do is protect your head with your hands and your arms and roll into the fall and land on the softest parts of your body. If you fight the fall, then you tend to fall on an outstretched hand or your wrist, which then essentially ends up with breaking a wrist or hand. And the best thing you can do is actually be aware of your environment, which means actually drop the phone.
Something keeps buzzing and buzzing and buzzing in my pocket. It feels urgent, like I gotta answer this now.
Whatever you need to do, it can always wait.
President Trump is now in full campaign mode.
You're the elite.
You are the elite. You're smarter than they are. You make bigger incomes. You've got everything going. And then you hear, the elite has just said. The elite. You're more elite than me. I have better everything than they have, including this. And I became president and they didn't, meaning you became president. And it's driving them crazy.
Trump ended the week with a third rally, this time for Ohio congressional candidate Troy Balders, are warning voters that the Russia threat is real and vowing to protect the November election against interference.